Catherine Orloff. I'm a professor in the Communication Arts Department. My advisee for this honors presentation is Stacey Axler. Stacey is a graduating communication arts major. She's also the editor of The Glowing Ray and a dedicated fan of Stanley Kubrick, one of the great directors in the history of 20th century film. And take it away, Stacey.
All right, thank you. Well, I would also, before I begin, I'd like to thank Professor Orloff for all of her help that she's given me, and also Dr. Atwood and Dr. Gerzik, and my parents are here. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad, and everyone else who's come to support me. Thank you very much. Okay, so, Love Letter to Stanley. What is this about? Well, it's about Stanley Kubrick, and if you don't know who Stanley Kubrick is, I, to put it mildly, feel bad for you, because Stanley Kubrick is, not just in my opinion, but if you like film, if you even appreciate film, you should know that Stanley Kubrick is basically the man. So, I wasn't this year, other Tischer scholars were studying enzymes or studying conflicts in foreign countries. I was studying basically this director that I've looked up to since I was 14, and it was just a really great experience for me. So, basically, Kubrick is really regarded as as Professor Orloff said, one of the greatest directors of the 21st century, and I wanted to break down his films to find several elements that you can look at a film and say, wow, that's a Stanley Kubrick film. So the three elements that I found were his use of an unstable protagonist in all of his movies, his interesting cinematography, and the editing and flow of all of his films. And the picture I included right there is a picture of him on the set of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I did not study for this project to be, which is an interesting fact, but I just thought that picture was really cool. So basically, to go into Kubrick's roots, he was born in 1928 in New York, and he lived in New York until his mid-20s. And he hated going to school, so instead of going to school, he would watch movies a lot. He would skip school and watch movies, which is pretty nice. But also, on top of that, his father tried to push him to go to school, so he gave him a camera, and he became the yearbook and newspaper photographer for his middle and high school. So he got very interested in photography, and when he graduated high school, he became a photographer for Look, the photo magazine, in 1945. I wanted to showcase these two photos. This is the first photo that he took that he ever sold to Look magazine. It was after FDR's death, and he took it of this newspaper salesman in New York, and as you can see, it's a very moving picture. Obviously, Kubrick captured just the utter, distress on this man's face. And then when he became a staff photographer for Look, he went on to do full-page photo spreads. So this is one that he did of the circus, and it's called The Circus, and he took it in 1940. And as you can see, I just feel like it's a very interesting composition. The lines, the coloring, everything about it, it's very intriguing. It's a very unique photo, and I feel like his meticulous look at how to frame things, you can see carry on into his filmmaking. After being a photographer for around 5 years, he decided that he could make movies. He had seen enough movies that he decided that he had the skills to be able to make them. So he started making documentaries, and at this point in his life, he was pretty broke because no one was really paying him a lot of money to make documentaries. So he was also a really avid chess player, and he would hustle chess in Central Park, and that's how he survived. But then in 1952, he made the documentary Day of the Fight, which was about boxing. Then he went on to make his first feature-length film, which is A Fear and Desire, and that's about this fake war. And then he made two film noirs, Killer's Kiss in 1955 and The Killing in 1956. And those two films provided him enough critical acclaim that he could go on to make his next feature film, which is Passive Glory. If anyone's seen it, it stars Kirk Douglas. But I would love to sit and talk to you all for hours and hours about all of Kubrick's films, but we honestly don't have those hours to spend. So I narrowed it down to five of his films that I just find fantastic. And the first one that I'm going to be analyzing for the three elements is Dr. Strangelove. Its official title is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. He made it in 1964. He made it right after he made Lolita, if anyone's seen Lolita. And this is a Cold War black comedy about a missile crisis. Then we're moving on to A Clockwork Orange, one of my favorite films. He made this in 1971. And note that he's now shifting to use color in his films. This is after 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was his first film in color. This is a dystopian sci-fi film starring Malcolm McDowell, and it's basically about this teenage degenerate that does a lot of really bad things, which I'm going to describe in a bit. Next, we have The Shining, that he made in 1980. This is a psychological horror film starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. If anyone's read the book, it's a pretty famous book by Stephen King. Next, we're moving on to Full Metal Jacket, and he made this in 1987. This is a war film, and I just think it's a really good war film, but I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. And then finally, his last film that he made before his death is Eyes Wide Shut, which he made in 1999, and this is a drama psychological thriller that stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. So, one of the elements that I said earlier that I identify as, really quintessential Kubrick is his use of an unstable protagonist. Now, I'd like you all to sort of mentally picture your favorite, movie hero, one that you grew up and wow, I really like that guy. I know Mom's like Rock Hudson and something, right? No, okay, well, never mind about that. But no one in Kubrick's films are that, typical protagonist, the one that will dash in and save the day. If anything, his protagonist will just screw things up and make things more complicated. Dr. Strangelove is really interesting because there's sort of three protagonists, and they're all more deranged than the other. We have President Muffley, played by Peter Sellers. We have Dr. Strangelove himself, played by Peter Sellers. And then we have General Ripper. And I really want to just show this one clip of the president doing his thing because it's a good clip.
Hello? Hello, Dimitri. Listen, I can't hear too well. Do you suppose you could turn the music down just a little? Oh, that's much better. Yeah. Yes. Fine, I can hear you now, Dimitri. Clear and plain and coming through fine. I'm coming through fine too, eh? Good, then... Well then, as you say, we're both coming through fine. Good. Well, it's good that you're fine and I'm fine.
All right, so as you can see, that's the person that's supposed to be leading our country, and he can't even get a sentence out. So as you can see, his Kubrick protagonists are definitely, especially for Dr. Strangelove, not really quite altogether there. Next, we're moving on to A Clockwork Orange. I'm sure if anyone's seen A Clockwork Orange, you're going to say, yeah, that guy's really messed up, because he is. This is the first shot that you see of the protagonist, Alex, and it starts off in this really close-up with his face, and then Kubrick pulls the camera out, while Alex he's also the narrator of the film, and he narrates, "There was me, this is Alex." And just from that introduction alone, he takes his milk that he's drinking and he toasts the audience and he drinks it. And I think that that's just, a wonderful introduction to this character that's clearly, he's 15 and out of his mind. He spends the first half of the movie, he rapes someone, he steals from people, he goes home, he has a pet snake that he keeps under his bed, and he fantasizes doing all these terrible things while listening to Beethoven, which is interesting, because he's not the typical, I know, right? It's not the typical bad guy. He's artistic, and he appreciates classical music, and he appreciates his intelligence. And from the beginning of the film, so this is the second scene to the end, he changes a little, but then he just goes right back to being a horrible person. Next, we have The Shining. Everyone knows Jack Nicholson. He plays Jack Torrance. His family goes to spend a winter in this old hotel, the Overlook Hotel, that's haunted. And as you can see, this is how he starts the film. This is sort of where he ends up. And then he dies. So he really has, his downward spiral is like the central focus of the film. Next, we have Full Metal Jacket, where we have our main character, Joker. Joker, right here he is in Paris Island. He's there for basic training to become a Marine. And his whole, conflict throughout this film is whether he's a killer and becoming a killer because he's in Vietnam and he thinks that he has to be a killer. But as you can see from this image right here, his helmet says "Born to Kill," but he's wearing a peace button. So he's constantly battling with his duality, and that duality is a really central part of his instability in the film. And next we have Tom Cruise as Dr. Hartford in Eyes Wide Shut. And his problem throughout the movie is that he's constantly trying to reestablish his manhood. His manhood was taken from him because, in his mind, because his wife, Nicole Kidman, confessed that she almost cheated on him. She didn't actually cheat on him. She almost cheated on him while they were vacationing 2 years ago. So he wanders around New York, tries to go into this orgy. It doesn't really work. He gets kicked out, and then his life is basically ruined. So moving on, that's sort of an introduction to our characters, and we're moving on now to cinematography. Kubrick's cinematography, for lack of a better phrase, is tops. Like, you can look at a film and say, wow, look at that. And I feel like when you really get down to it, it's because of his background as a photographer. He really set up shot after shot. And that being said, he did have cinematographers working on the film, and I want to pay them their respect too. But also, with that being said, Kubrick, I feel, really had a lot of control over his film, over all of his films, for that matter. So as you can see, the way for Dr. Strangelove, he used different sort of camera angles to capture the different rooms or the different areas of the film. So right here we're in the war room, and that's President Muffley that we just saw in the clip that I showed. And as you can see, the room has, his capture of the room sort of engulfs the president. He looks very small. Again, he's not in charge at all. And then right over here we have the B-52 that's carrying the bomb going to Russia. And again, the way that Kubrick set this shot up is very cramped. And I feel like the cramped part of the shot allows for a lot of physical humor and a physical comedy to arise. Of course, I can't really show this with this picture, and if I showed every video clip I wanted to, we'd be here for 12 hours, but I just think it is, it's really funny, and this particular with the top secret code R, it's a very funny shot. Next we're going on to A Clockwork Orange, and the cinematography of A Clockwork Orange is crucial to understanding how Alex can both be a villain but also sort of a refined guy, and I have a clip to show that.
As we walked along the flat block marina, I was calm on the outside, but thinking all the time. So now it was to be Georgie the General, saying what we should do and what not to do, and dim as his mindless, grinning bulldog. But suddenly I vidded that thinking was for the gloopy ones, and that the only ones used like inspiration and what Bog sense. For now it was lovely music that came to my aid. There was a window open with a stereo on, and I vidded right at once what to do.
Yes, I know, leaving you in a cliffhanger right here, but that just goes to show you, it was obviously an act of violence, but with like the slow motion and the the really nice shot, they're walking up along the marina, and then he just boom hits George in that area. It's almost like a ballet, and also I just also included this picture, or this image I should say, of him undergoing what they call the Ludovico treatment later in the film. The cinematography for The Shining is also integral to understand the fear that the characters experience in the film, and I feel a lot of entrapment is gotten from the images that you see. The hallway that the character's son Danny rides through almost around and around endlessly. As you can see, the walls are almost caving in. The way that he just captured this is very oppressive, and I thought that was also mirrored in the mountains as well. For Full Metal Jacket, we see Joker again. When Joker is not born to kill, Kubrick always captures him standing upright in a more jocular way. But then when he's in action, when he's in the heat of battle, as you can see, Born to Kill on his helmet, the camera's always tight on his face, and I noticed that distinction. And then for Eyes Wide Shut, one thing that I noticed is Kubrick's always typed in on the mask, and I feel like Bill wears his manhood like a mask. And this is a scene towards the end where Bill has to remove his mask and puts it by his wife. For editing, I just feel like all of Kubrick's editing techniques are, again, really tops. And they seem, when they go in between the scenes, everything gets much faster. So for the scene that we just saw with the president in the war room, that scene lasted, 5 minutes, but the scene in the war room gets shorter and shorter and shorter, leading up to the grand finale where they ride the bomb into Russia. That's similar for A Clockwork Orange, but not in the terms of it gets quicker, in the terms that it gets very more like chaotic and frantic. The editing just goes haywire until Alex tries to kill himself because he can't take the abuse that people are enduring to him, the same that he actually he did to other people. For The Shining, things just get faster and faster until the ultimate conclusion, where all pandemonium breaks loose. If you've seen The Shining, you know what I mean. I don't really want to spoil it, but it starts off with the opening, and then it jumps to a month ahead, and then it goes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then every time up to that until the end. For Full Metal Jacket, I love the editing of Full Metal Jacket. It really helps express Joker's slow, steady progression into the killer from his friend. I don't want to call him a friend because he wasn't really his friend, in boot camp. Cut to him in Vietnam with his other friend, and then this lady approaches them and offers herself to them. It's a very jarring editing technique. And for Eyes Wide Shut, you see Bill again with Nicole Kidman, his wife, and just the editing between their sexual encounters, him thinking about it, and then what actually is happening, him walking through the streets of New York. It's very, very jarring. So what does all this mean, and why have I really presented this to you? And again, I think that when you really get to it, I just love Stanley Kubrick. He directed 13 feature films throughout his career. And what I really hope that I've impressed upon at least one of you here today is that just please go home and watch one of these, because they're really great. And I feel like you are really doing a disservice to yourself if you just don't watch any of them. So thank you all for your time. That's what I have.
Thanks, Stacey, for a very lively performance and presentation. You were just delightful. Thank you. We have a few minutes for questions for Stacey.
Okay, can you pick a favorite?
Okay, yes, I can. Dr. Strangelove has to be my favorite, and then A Clockwork Orange, and then Full Metal Jacket. In that.
Among the film community, he's still a rather controversial figure. A lot of people think he's an over-stylized jerk.
Yeah,
among people who were his producers and worked for him. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that someone's work does tend to be sort of art for art's sake, or do you feel that he really does produce a full movie?
I feel like you really have to be in the mindset to appreciate Kubrick, because of course, definitely arts for art's sake, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You come out of watching it and you say, what just happened to me? It's very pretty, and there's a lot of nice colors and lights flashing, and you have a beautiful score going on, but I don't really feel like you leave 2001: A Space Odyssey having grown as a person, which I feel like every good film should do. But having watched 2001 meticulously over, the past 10 years of my life, I feel like I have gotten an appreciation for sort of what he was trying to get at, which I can't really put into words. It's just a feeling of appreciation for life, which I feel, if anything, you should leave a film feeling that.